Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another week with me, Dexter Edmund. Um, Continuing from our discussion on last week, which I'm so appreciative of the support and the just the impact that it had on all of us last week. And what I want to do today is just give you an update on my week. I was blessed, and I say blessed, to be a part of the Black Lives Matters march on Sunday. And I want to talk a little bit about that and really focus on some steps that we can do together. And because we're going to make a difference. We're going to absolutely make a difference. And I'm so elated for our young people who are absolutely engaged and connected with this whole issue, the issue of Black Lives Matters, and so we're going to spend a few moments together this evening. So let me talk about Sunday. Sunday was an interesting day for me. I began my day with an interview on the BBC. Which I thoroughly enjoyed. And the presenter, Lucy, was excellent. She asked excellent questions, and I feel like I was well respected and honored on her program. And so I'm really looking forward to doing more work with her and just to provide a view that speaks to and speaks from my heart as it relates to this issue. And the reason why I'm back on it again this week is because it's still very fresh in our minds, and we've got to keep it fresh. We've got to keep it alive, because if we don't keep it alive, then it will drift into the memories of the population, and it will, it will just not be what we want it to be. Of course, yesterday we have seen the services for George Floyd, and he's been laid to rest, but the action still goes on, and we must go on. All right. So Sunday morning was great. And so after the interview, my son and I made our way down to City Hall, where the demonstration was taking place. And we gathered there. When we got there, there were so many people already there. And I've been in large crowds before, whether at sporting events and or other occasions, but there was no anxiety that I sensed. There was no anxiety in me. Thousands of people. I understand there was upwards of 10,000 people that were there. The Lord provided us an outstanding day. It was a great day. The weather was perfect, and the attitude was perfect. The event was well organized by young people. I believe they were students. And of course, the highlight of the day for me was listening to my son, Daniel, who was the first speaker to make an impassioned speech. And it was, as a father, and I was on my camera, so I was the one that was recording him. But as a father, you could not, I was just so full of admiration, not just pride, because obviously he's my son, so I'm proud of him. But there was a great sense of admiration. I admired what he was doing, and I admired what he was saying, and the tone in which he was saying it. We have raised our children to be respectful and honorable, and even though it was a very sensitive subject, but it was presented in a way that everybody heard, and the message was clear. And so I very much admired, and the other speakers were excellent also, and all speaking from a different perspective, all speaking from a different place of priority, but everybody bound together by the fact that Black Lives Matter. The 8 minutes and 46 seconds that people were invited to kneel, or they were invited to stand. Now, this is what I'm going to say, and for those of us, that are regular church attenders, you might find this humorous. But I've been in services where we have tried to observe 1 minute of silence and couldn't manage it. somebody had to make some type of reaction. But in the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that people were either standing or kneeling at City Hall in Bristol on Sunday, I don't think I heard anybody say anything. It was a very powerful moment, very, very powerful moment. And it just speaks to the unity of what was going on. So then, of course, we left City Hall and then made our way down to the city center. Those of you that are familiar with Bristol will know the path that we took. So we left City Hall, College Green, across from the Bristol Cathedral, went down Park Street, and then continued into the city center outside the Hippodrome. We walked past that. And then my son and I and the group that we were with, we had already passed the statue. And we were on our way to Castle Green, which was where the culmination of the march was going to take place. And it was while we were in that vicinity that we heard the uproar. It was just this loud a roar. And I didn't know what had taken place. And my son didn't. In fact, I'll just fast forward. We did not know that the statue had come down until we came home. Until we got home, and then social media was blowing up. That's how we knew. And I'm going to talk about the statue in a moment. That's how we knew that the statue had come down. That Colston statue had come down. And of course, I have not been more proud to be a Bristolian than I have this week. I think that our city was well represented. Our city has set the tone throughout the world. It has led, I have family in the US, and Bristol has led the evening news in terms of the images of the statue coming down. And I understand that Reverend Al Sharpton, mentioned Bristol in his eulogy of George Floyd on yesterday. And now there is this national groundswell for these statues that represent persons that owned people. They own people. And I'm going to say some things tonight. And I'm going to, again, speak from my heart, because I think it's important that we understand what civil disobedience is all about. Civil disobedience is actually the willful disregard of laws, but in a nonviolent manner. And there is nothing, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say there is nothing that has happened in this world to change the lives of human beings that did not first begin with civil disobedience. And I am open for to be corrected on that. Gandhi used civil disobedience in India to make changes there. We would not have heard about Dr. Martin Luther King. I believe this. We would not have heard about him. The world would never have known about Dr. Martin Luther King if it wasn't for an act of civil disobedience by Rosa Parks. Now, in 1955, now listen to what I'm about to say. In 1955, it was illegal. It was against the law for a Black woman, or Black man for that matter, to sit at the front of the bus. And Rosa Parks, who was tired, was on her way home, and made a decision that she was not going to the back of the bus on that day. She was not going to the back of the bus that day. She was not going to the back of the bus. And she sat there, and of course she was arrested. Because why? It was the law for it was the law that Black people had to sit at the back of the bus. And she engaged in civil disobedience. She was arrested. And it was out of that, there was a young pastor in Birmingham, Alabama, pastoring the Dexter Street Baptist Church, a young man by the name of Martin Luther King Jr., who then began, whether willingly or unwillingly, became the leader of the international movement that would be what we would know now as civil rights, the civil rights movement. So nothing of any import. It was not a riot. I do not agree that it was a mob. I want to commend our police our chief of police here in Bristol. And I tweeted him and just said that I appreciated there was a tremendous police presence there. I engaged with the police officers. In fact, those that I walked past, I thanked them for being there. One of them, I remember, a policewoman said to me, if it were not for the whole pandemic, she would have shook my hand. The police that I saw were very engaging. I did not see any. They were on the perimeter. But I think that we all know that if the police had intervened, we would be talking about something different tonight. We would just, so I think it was sensible policing. I think that it was sensible policing. And we have not heard of a window being smashed, a car being turned over. We have not heard of any shops being looted. Over 10,000 people marched in peace, And the story has come, of course, for the taking down of the statue. Now, let's just talk about this for a moment. I wasn't born in Bristol, but I was raised here. I lived in Bristol. I was born in Birmingham and came down here with my parents when I was 4 months old. So I've lived in Bristol and grew up here. So grew up seeing that statue there. Every time that we would go to the city center, that statue was there. And Colston, his name is on quite a lot in Bristol. Those of you from Bristol, and those of you now who, because of what took place, have a greater understanding of Bristol and our history. Bristol was part of the Triangle, the slave ships left the west coast of Africa, stopped in Bristol and Liverpool, but Bristol being a port. And there were persons here who absolutely made their fortune buying and selling human beings. And one of the things that I want to do tonight and throughout the remainder of whatever way this goes is I bought this book, The Horrors of Slavery. It's by Robert Wenderburn, and I've not yet been able. It just came today. I ordered it yesterday, and it came today. But I wanted to re-educate. Not that I needed educating, because I absolutely get a sense of the horrors of slavery. Now, there were 2 million people. I'm not going to call them slaves. I'm going to call them people. There were 2 million people who left the west coast of Africa and did not make it to America. They died. They died on the ships and they were dumped in the sea. Okay. We don't even know the numbers of people, the total numbers of people who were taken from their homeland of West Africa against their will. I understand that in Ghana, you can go to the castle there where the slaves were held before they went onto the ships. And I understand, and hopefully one day I'll be able to visit and experience this. But I understand that when you go there, you can still smell the odor of thousands of people who were stacked like boxes in these caves, ready to be shipped to come to England and to the United States. So unless you have that appreciation of history, a statue is just a statue. But what it represents to those of us who understand the pain and the horror of slavery, it's a symbol. No one, I'm certainly not advocating removing the Wills Building or removing the Colston Hall Colston Girls School or Colston Boys. And nobody's talking about that. That is for those persons who are, in charge of those institutions. I understand that there, and has been for years, which I'll come back to in a moment, has been for years, petition after petition wanted to remove the statue. And nothing took place. Mayor after mayor after mayor, nothing took place. We elected council persons and council people to go down to City Hall and debate. There could not be an agreement on, I understand that a decision was made that, okay, the statue was not to come down, but they were going to remove the plaque. Just the plaque. And no agreement could be made on what was to be put on the plaque. And so while people discussed and while people signed petitions and while the statue stood there, and on Sunday it came down. And now I'm hearing this now, and I've met Marvin Reese, our mayor, and I'm very proud of him and the work that he was doing. But here's the story now. Why, with Bristol having a black mayor, does that statue still remain? Now listen to what I'm about to say. The entire burden to remove that statue has now been laid at the feet of Marvin Reese. And my question is why? Why? Why, after all of these years, after all of these petitions, after all of this uproar about that, why is it now his responsibility to take down the sign, to take down the statue? It's not Marvin Reese's responsibility as a black man to take that down. It's the responsibility of the city, of the council people who represent the city, to come to a decision and make a decision that statue, what it represents and who it represents. And the fact that Colston was a benevolent benefactor of this city does not clean up the money. And no one can disagree with the fact that ill-gotten gains can be used in a positive way to bring assistance to people. But he should not be glorified. And he should not be in the middle of a modern city like Bristol, a city that many of us love. We love to live here. We love the diversity of this city. We love the vibe of this city. I love Bristol. And Bristol has a great, and on Sunday, it was Bristol at her best. At her best. And yes, 17 people they've identified decided that they were going to take down the statue. But I am not going to allow that incident to mar what was, in my opinion, one of the highlights in the history of this city. That over 10,000 people marched peacefully in a nonviolent way. There was no scuffle, there was no fight, there was no confrontation with the police. And I think that as a Bristolian, as someone who calls this city home, and for those, it was excellent. I'm glad I went. I'm glad I was a part of it. And for those people who, again, feel that it shouldn't have happened because of the pandemic and because of social distancing, it was so well organized that they had volunteers. That I walked and people were spraying our hands. Many people. I would say the majority of people that I saw had a mask on. I had a mask on, and my son and others. People were responsible. There were some creative signs, and people made their points clear. But I want to say, well done to Bristol. And I know, it's anything that was going to be deemed as a negative was going to be used to try to to soil. And I listened to the radio on that Monday, and of course, you just had divergent views, and it should have been taken down, and it's a democracy, and it should have been taken down. And I think one of the former mayors of the city has said that he should have done it. Well, he didn't do it, but it got done on Sunday. It's a symbol. It's what it represents. And this is why all the time I'm asked by my white brothers and sisters, when we engage in a conversation about racism, they will say, well, what can we do? You can take down the statue. You can take down the statue. What can we do? How can we help the cause? You can agree that to have a statue of a man that owned people and bought and sold them, Colston probably treated his horse better than he treated humanity. And I'm going to say something else to you today. I don't have any figures on the number of our Jewish brothers and sisters who live in this city. I'm sure there are synagogues here in Bristol, and I probably should know about them. But I am absolutely sure that there are people of the Jewish faith and Jewish ancestry and who live in the city of Bristol. And I can guarantee, and I can't guarantee a lot. I can't guarantee a lot. But this is one thing I guarantee. That if there was a statue of Adolf Hitler in the city, well, first of all, there would be no statue of Adolf Hitler in the middle of our city. And if that came down, there would be no uproar. And so I am sensing and seeing, for those people who are so vehemently opposed to the removing and have had all of these years to do it. I mean, if that was something that Bristol wanted to do, it could have already been done. It should not have been there in the first place. It should not have been there in the first place. But the fact that it was there and it stayed there, it just shows the inaction. It's either inaction or ineptitude of politicians to have some moral backbone and to say, you know what, this is wrong. This is wrong. It shouldn't be here. And so civil disobedience, there is nothing that has the emancipation of a people. The emancipation of a people has taken place where civil disobedience has not been involved in. Now, if someone has said to me, well, Dexter, we're going to get a rope and we're going to go down here. I would have told them not to do it. Not because I don't think that the statue be removed, but what that could have led to in terms of some kind of interaction with the police. And you don't want that. You did not want that to be the story Monday morning. And it was ceremoniously removed and it went down into water. I understand today that they picked it up. And what should happen? It should go into a museum. And if people want to know, they go to the museum. We have an outstanding museum here in the city of Bristol. You should go into the museum. And our children in this city that go to school in the city, they should know what Colston represents. And I'm wondering, and I know people who've gone to Colston Girls School, and I know people who've gone to Colston, family members who've gone to both schools. I wonder, as part of their understanding of the history of their educational institutions, do they even understand or know about who Colston was? So the dilemma continues and the issue continues. And so let me kind of segue from that now and talk about the inner conflict that I am dealing with. I'm going to talk about three men: Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, and Martin Luther King. And I'll deal with them in that order: Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, and Martin Luther King. Malcolm X, many people have heard of. Uh, uh, we have a community center in this city that's named for Malcolm X. Um, Marcus Garvey, maybe you would have to know some of your history to know who Marcus Garvey was, a Jamaican-born leader who moved to the United States. And in fact, he and I share a birthday. He was born in, August 17th, 1887. Yeah. And then, of course, Martin Luther King, who many people. Now, Malcolm X was straight out and out violence. Malcolm X's position was, they're not going to give us anything. They're not going to give us anything. So we've got to fight for it. If we're going to be free, we have to fight for it. Yes. There is an iconic picture of Malcolm X in his house looking through the window, and he has a AK-47 machine gun in his hand, because of course he came under, and he would eventually be shot. He came under immense attack, and so he was a Muslim. He believed and studied the Islamic faith and was militant. There was no other word to describe Malcolm X's position. He was articulate, and a tremendous amount of quotes by Malcolm X. But Malcolm's position was, we have to fight. We've got to fight. Marcus Garvey's position was, fight, but don't rely on the dominant culture. And I think this is the message that gets lost in this whole debate about racism. And Marcus Garvey said, listen, if Malcolm said they're not going to give us freedom, Marcus Garvey's position said they're not going to allow us to have access to wealth. And sometimes, we believe that the only two colors of racism is black and white, but the real color of racism is green, or whatever, in England we've got purple money and blue money. It's economics. It's economics. And so Marcus Garvey said, listen, don't depend on the dominant culture to give you anything. Stop looking for the dominant culture to give you handouts, to provide for you. Marcus Garvey said, you have a mind, you can think, you can plan, organize. So Malcolm was militant. Marcus Garvey was self-reliance. Stop looking for people to give you stuff. Stop depending upon people to give you stuff, give you things. So in other words, if they won't allow you into their businesses, start your own business. So this is about economic power now, because at the end of the day, that's what really runs this world. Yes. So even though the pandemic is not over, even though people, are now, but because the economy is not now, it's no longer, the priority is no longer. There is an equal priority, and the equal priority, along with now people's health, is the economy. So we've got to get the economy going, because this world operates, this country operates upon money. And Marcus Garvey said, the rich are not just going to give you anything. So we have got to create our own businesses. We've got to create our own communities. We have to use our own intelligence and develop our own infrastructure. And this is a very powerful thought, and I think it's something that's missed in this whole thing. And I think that we need to do better as a community. And I shared this last week. We have got to support our own people. We've got to support Black-owned businesses. We've got to support. We just cannot wait around for people to give us things. I think a couple of days ago, before I go on to Martin Luther King. Now, this is unscripted, and I'm just I'm just speaking from my heart tonight. But I watched something here just a few days ago called Sitting in Limbo, which speaks to um, the Windrush scandal. Now, my brothers and sisters, George Floyd. Let's leave George Floyd in Minneapolis, USA, for a moment, and let's come here to the United Kingdom. And the Home Office have admitted that thousands of people's records, their landing cards, were destroyed. So that when people who had lived here all of their lives, the majority of their lives, wanted to prove some level of citizenship, they were rounded up and some were deported. And if you, the timing of that program, or that film coming out on the BBC, I think was absolutely, it was well timed. Because by the time I watched it, while I was kind of calming down a little bit, now this is not the murder of a man in the street, but this is the willful. This is the willful. And our former prime minister, when she referred to them, she used the term, we need to get rid of them. So the issue is not about whether Black lives matter. It's what value you put to a Black life. So if you're saying you're going to get rid of them, and you and I both know we have to have a whole conversation about racism, yes, but we need to have a whole conversation about colonialism. So when people ask you as a Black man, Black woman, why you are here, your response should be because your parents were there. That's how we got here. We got here because people left here and went there. That's how we got here. And now we were born here. We have a right to be here as citizens of this country. So Garvey said, listen, don't look for anybody. Don't look for handouts. Don't look for anybody. And this speaks to the whole taking down of the statue. If you leave it to them, they're not going to take it down. They don't want to take it down. You've seen the uproar since the statue came down. Oh, it's a part of our history, and they don't want. So guess what? Sometimes Garvey said, and maybe this is where Garvey and Malcolm were like, you can't wait for them to take it down. You've got to take it down yourself. Rosa Parks said, listen, I'm not going to the back of the bus. I'm staying right here. And if you arrest me, you arrest me, but I'm staying right here. And you know what happened? Martin Luther King and others, they organized the bus boycott. We've had, in fact, our history in Bristol, we know that there was a time when the Bristol Omnibus Company did not employ Black people, and very similar Black people here in the city. They boycotted the bus until that changed. Sometimes that's the only way change is going to come. And what they did in Birmingham, Alabama, they said, okay. Said, if we can't sit at the back of the bus, we're not sitting. If we can't sit at the front of the bus, we're not sitting on the bus. And as a people, they organized before there was ever an Uber. They organized within the community. They organized taxi services and car services to get people back to and from work. And I'm going to show you something here. They did it for over 300 days. Such was the economic impact on the bus company in Birmingham, Alabama. They had to change the law. Civil disobedience did that. Economic impact did that. And those same principles are still here today. So we as a people, and being, as I said it last week, being pro-black does not mean you're anti-white. It means that we have got to take some self-determination. We have got to engage in some self-help. And we can't just be crying about racism and the evils of what people do to us. We have got to organize within our own community. And we've got to help ourselves. Marcus Garvey said, basically, God helps those who help themselves. And that's why we've got to go to school, and we've got to be educated, and we've got to utilize our economic power. Because what I'm telling you is, people will wake up when their bank accounts are being impacted. Yes? So you don't want to hire us, you don't want to promote us, you don't want to, then guess what? We're not gonna take our money, and we're not going to come to this store. Plain and simple. And we affect change in a nonviolent way using the tools of the system. And let me just say something about systematic racism. I thought about this today. I was in conversations today, and the conversation of systematic racism came up. And I agreed. It's not systematic racism. A system can't be racist. No more so than a car can be racist. This computer that I'm using right now, this can't be a racist computer. People are racist. People are racist. It's people that run systems. It's people that preside over organizations. And racism has always existed, and racism will always exist as long as one group of people believe themselves to be superior to another group of people and allow that superiority to keep another group of people under. Not equal. Now, I absolutely agree that, and my son said this so eloquently in his speech on Sunday, that we need partners. Absolutely, we need partners, but we don't need favors. We don't need favors. And as I said in the interview on Sunday, that see, racism is not my issue. I'm impacted by it, absolutely. Racism is not a black man's issue. So if it's not my issue, then I should be the one to solve it. And the truth of the matter is, I can't solve racism. Black people can't solve racism. We can't solve it. Black people can't put an end to racism. And so we want, and I have wonderful white colleagues and who are deeply troubled. They are as deeply troubled as we are. And some have absolutely want to be part of the solution, and we welcome that. But it should not have taken 17 people to take down a statue of a man that owned slaves and profited by the buying and selling of our ancestors. That shouldn't have been that shouldn't have been left for people to take down. It should have been taken down. And so that is part of my frustration, that when we are asked, what can I do to help? How can I get involved? What can I do to help? Take down the statue. Why should I have to convince you that an owner of slaves does not deserve to be in the middle of this city that I call home? What is there to what is there to convince? What is there to convince? Why has it taken Bristol so long? And why now have you put the burden of the removing of that sign on the first black mayor this city has ever had? You have now put that burden upon him, when that statue has been in the city for over 100 years. And can I just say this? And the expectation, now I'm going to say something really controversial here today, right now. You see, the expectation for Marvin Reese to have taken down that statue is in itself racism. That in itself is a racist attitude. To blame a black man for not taking down a statue of a slave owner, that in itself is the personification. It is the idea that we have to fix the problems that we didn't make. That we have to fix the problems we didn't make. That in itself is a racist idea. It's a racist attitude. So we don't have a problem with the statue going into the museum. We don't have a statue. We don't have a problem with his activities being. Now listen to the fuss. Now this is where I'm kind of getting it. We have 2 schools in this city named for him. We have the only place you can go back in the day to see a great concert was the Colston Hall. There's the Colston Tower. We've got streets named for him. And you all are tripping over one statue? And people are tripping. Well, it was how it was taken down. I hope that I'm not repeating myself. The statue had been there for over 100 years, and nobody could agree. Mayor after mayor, politicians after politicians sat in the council and city hall and debated back and forth about this, and they could not even agree on the wording of the plaque. So what are we supposed to do while you all are deciding and trying to come to agreement with what are we supposed? We're just supposed to walk past it every day. We're just supposed to, we're supposed to just wait. We're just supposed to wait until you all determine and decide. Well, the wait came to an end on Sunday. The wait came to an end. And yes, it was civil disobedience, absolutely. And as a man of faith and as a pastor of the church, I am telling you, and I'm going on record here tonight, that there is nothing that has happened to improve the plight of our people throughout the world that did not come as a result of civil disobedience. Nothing. Slavery did not end in the United States without civil disobedience. Black people were not given rights to vote without civil disobedience. So Martin Luther King, where you had coffee shops that said whites only, Black people went in and sat where they weren't supposed to sit. Rosa Parks sat where she wasn't supposed to sit. And as a result of sitting where they were not supposed to sit, change happened. And what we're seeing in this country is change. And why people want it suppressed is because they're nervous that if you change it, that somebody loses out. I'll say it again. Nobody wants any favors. We desire equality of opportunity. And I firmly believe that we have a great opportunity now. And I have some ideas in terms of how we are to support. Now, I'm not telling you Can I just go? We need to start our own banks. We need to start, and even those of us in our culture that understand the partner system of saving money, we need to take that and expand it to where we have our own lending opportunities. Now, we have communities in this country. They don't go to Lloyd's. When they want money, they don't go to Lloyd's. When their uncle wants to start a business, they don't go to Barclays Bank for any money. When they want to buy a house, they don't go to the Halifax Building Society to take out a mortgage. And I think that I'm speaking in code now, so you will understand. The community comes together, and we're going to buy you a house this week. And next month we're going to get you settled, and next month we're going to buy this other family house. So they have an economy within an economy. They have an economy within an economy. And what I'm saying, we've got to march, absolutely. We've got to demonstrate, absolutely. We've got to write Black Lives Don't Matter. And as I did, take pictures and post them and black out this and do all of this stuff. We've got to do all of that. But at the end of the day, we've got to come up with a strategy. And part of that strategy is economics. That's the only way people take notice in this capitalistic world that we live in. Where the view is, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You've heard that statement. Well, what if I don't have any bootstraps? We've got to organize. We've got to sit down. And this is not about, us having a separatist, community in. No. This is about honoring our own brilliance. This is about honoring our own creativity. And our creativity, listen to what I'm about to say. Our creativity goes beyond dance and music and kicking a ball on a field. Our brilliance as a people goes beyond that. But that's all this dominant culture, that's all they will recognize us as. And really, when you think about it, I'm really getting controversial now. That's no more than the minstrel on the stage. So we are allowed to entertain them. Oh, he's a brilliant football player. So pick him for England. Oh, she can sing. Put her in a group. And when we have gospel choirs, oh, we love the way that you all sing. And they will allow us to sing even at royal weddings. But they won't take down a statue. And there is some, and I'm going to talk to my people here tonight. I'm going to talk to all of us as Black people. And then I'm going to talk to some of us as church people. We need to love one another. We need to love one another. Now I'm soon to come on. But some of us treat each other worse than they treat us. And you know what I'm talking about. So if I go in for an interview and I see people who look like me on the interview, I'm not taking it for granted they're going to give me a break. In fact, on the contrary, I'm expecting them to be hard on me. And when we get promoted and we get into positions, and when it's like we don't want anybody else to come in. And especially when I said it last week, they let us in, but they don't let us up. And then sometimes when we are given an opportunity, we make it bad for the people that's coming behind us. Yes, it's an additional burden, but it's just part of what we were told from we were children. That you got to jump higher, you've got to run faster, you've got to be better. You've got to be better just to bring it equal. You've got to be better just a bit equal. So I love it, and I love our young people, and social media is helping us, and power to the people and all this. But we need to come up with a strategy. We need to come up with a strategy. And so part of what we have to do is not depending on other people to do things for us. It's not depending upon we've got to learn how to save our money and stop taking our money and buying things and keep buying things to have on the latest this. So when we get a little money, we wear it. We don't invest it. We wear it. Because we are very materialistic. Yes? And so what we have to do, we have to have an economic, this is about economics now. It's about economics. That's the only way we're going to move ahead. We've got to be educated. We've got to have an economic plan whereby we circulate and invest in our own and stop waiting on others. Because evidently, if we continue to wait and wait and wait and wait, things are not going to happen the way. I've enjoyed speaking with you tonight. One of these weeks, I'm going to get back to teaching Bible study. One of these weeks, I'm going to get back to teaching Bible study. But part of what we have to do as a people is take care of ourselves. Got to love ourselves. Got to love our neighbor. Got to do good to people. Take care of each other. Because we can't be fighting on that front and then have to fight on this front. We've got to love one another. Do as Jesus said, love one another. And so when the man was going from Jerusalem to Jericho, he fell among thieves and they left him half dead. The Levite and the priest came by, but they didn't do anything about it. They looked and kept on moving. And so, the Good Samaritan. I want to thank you for being with me tonight. I want to thank our brothers and sisters. I've got, like I said, we need allies. We need partners. So back to Birmingham, Alabama. They didn't change the laws in Birmingham, Alabama to let black people sit at the front of the bus because somehow, you know why they did it? You know why they changed the law? Because the bus company began to lose money. And it was when the bus company began to lose money, they said, we've had to change the law. It wasn't a handout. It wasn't a benevolence. It wasn't a conscience of people. It started to impact them economically. And I suggest to you, when things start to impact people economically, look at what's happening in this country. The economic impact is causing the government to say, these people got to get back to work. So put on a mask. Make sure you wash your hands. Make sure you exercise. But you got to get back to work, because now this pandemic is impacting us economically. And as a people, we need to come up with an economic plan. I'm going to talk more about this, amen, even within our church, within our fellowship. We've got great business people, service people that can provide services. So you as a black man, you must know, as a black woman, you must know who can do what within your community. And you must support them. And then those of us that are providing services, we must do it with excellence. And we must have great customer service. Because if you want me to come into your store, you got to treat me like a customer, man. So this thing is huge. And so we've got a lot of work to do. Thank you for your time. I love you. For those of you that join me on Sunday mornings for Sunday morning reflections, I look forward to you being there with me on Sunday. I love you. Thank God for you. I appreciate all of the support. I appreciate all of the prayers. I appreciate the opportunities that the Lord is affording me, whether it be on radio, whether it be on YouTube or on social media. Amen. To speak aloud, to cry aloud, and to spare not. It's prophetic. That's what we are called to do. Amen. And so I look forward to seeing you all soon. All right. God bless you. Take care and enjoy the remainder of your week.